Hello, welcome back to the Matt Pfeiffer Experience. I am your host, Matthew Pfeiffer, and I have on a very special guest today. We have on Jackie Harounian and from Wisselman Harounian Law Firm out of New York City, or right outside of New York City, I should say, New York State. And I cannot wait for you guys to listen to this interview. She has a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience. Someone who is very passionate about family law. You guys know how we operate here. We only bring people on that we would recommend to our friends and our family, or that we would hire ourselves. And she certainly fits that profile. You're going to understand some of the reasons why when you guys hear this interview. And so, Jackie, I'm going to turn it over to you real quick. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
So my name is Jackie Harounian. As you mentioned, I have a family law practice on Long Island, which is just outside New York City and actually covers some of the outer boroughs of New York City. I've been practicing family law for more than 25 years, actually since I graduated law school. And I've always enjoyed, we call it family law now. It used to be called matrimonial law. And this is like a sort of a rebranding of the term. And it's in recognition of the fact that families are not always people who are married. It's not always about divorce matters. We handle many matters that are people that are not married, custody agreements, child support matters, orders of protection, of course, divorce, and lots of prenuptial agreements lately. So lots of trends going on in family law because families are changing. And I've been really happy to be helping clients, thousands of clients, through my law firm, which actually is a 50-year-old firm, almost 50 years old. So it's a well-established firm, and we're one of the larger firms in the area.
Wow. I'm really glad that you mentioned that in terms of the dynamics of families changing, because a lot of times people don't even realize that some things fall under family law versus maybe some other laws. Or I've talked to people that they didn't even realize that they could go to speak to a family attorney about their situation. For example, I remember several years ago, I was working with a client that they had a surrogate situation that she needed to speak to a family law attorney about, when there's adoption and then a divorce. And there's so many different dynamics, and then there's so many different variables depending on the state, city, county that you're in, and what judge you go to. And so I think you hit the nail on the head that the dynamics of what families look like now are now very, very different. Also sometimes people might adopt, a niece, nephew.
That's right.
There's so many different, or if there's an actual legal adoption of someone's stepkids, all of those things can definitely change people's dynamics. And it sounds like you deal with all of that.
Yeah, we do actually. You mentioned adoptions. We handle step-parent and adult adoptions, and it's one of the most joyful and meaningful things we do in family law. Everyone knows family law cases are pretty intense, can be quite negative, a lot of negative emotions sometimes, but adoptions are very joyful and happy types of cases. And we had one last week in Nassau Surrogates Court, which was truly very special. And I felt very blessed to be part of that. And like you said, some of the more cutting edge family law issues, surrogacy, fertility law, sperm donor agreements, IVF agreements, these are things that our parents and grandparents wouldn't even think of or dream of. But since New York State passed a surrogacy law in the middle of the pandemic, so it's pretty new, we have had many cases now involving surrogacy, which helps so many parents, same-sex parents, women experiencing infertility, single parents. It really has been a game changer for a lot of people that want to become parents in ways that are very different than, like I said, previous generations.
One of the things, that about your journey into family law, and you and I talked about this before we got on, and I always mention this whenever we interview any attorney, that you're only the second person that I've interviewed that said, I knew exactly that's exactly what I wanted to do, was to become a family law attorney. Most people have some sort of journey. They started out in business or criminal law or, other things. And then they kind of back themselves into family law. Typically, most often, they're asked to do kind of a case pro bono or as a favor to a friend or so just someone that they know. someone's just trying to cut costs while that person is young, and then they kind of find out and they discover that they really enjoy it, and they enjoy the aspect of it, of giving back and allowing people to take their life back and things. Through this process with you, well, the two questions I have for you is, what was it about family law that really drew you to it? And then also, what would you say are some misconceptions about family law that some people might have going into it, or about just in general about a family law attorney?
Yeah, I mean, family law attorneys, we kind of get a bad rap, and so there are some bad people involved in the field, and people should steer clear of those. Do your research before you hire a lawyer. But why I love family law, why I've always loved it since I started law school, is that it really, first of all, it's very interesting. You're dealing with people's mistakes and their humanity and their infidelity and their parenting. And it's so relatable on so many levels. I was a parent before I started law school. I was a very young mom, married, still married. Now I'm a mom of 4. And I instantly connected with the parenting issues, the psychology of it. I really am interested in psychology. I actually got a graduate degree in psychology about 6 years ago. Family law not only is about relationships and about the psychological underpinnings of relationships, but there's a lot of financial issues in there. There's tax law, there's business law, there's dealing with assets and debts, and dealing with, fairness and gender roles and, like I said, parenting and the psychology of parenting. So it has always held my interest. And what I realize I love the most about family law is helping people reach a point of settlement. I describe myself as a zealous peacemaker. I will try very hard to get people to the point where they will consider terms for settling. And sometimes that happens on the first day of trial. I do go to court quite a bit. So I do litigation, but my preferred mode is to get people to settle down their emotions and really think rationally about what is going to be the best outcome for them. And more, that means joint custody. The laws have changed a lot. And now this leads into your second question. What are misconceptions? People still think that mothers have the advantage in family law, that men are the ones that are paying through the nose to support their families, and that outcomes are unfair. And I have to say, especially with the vantage point of doing this for almost 3 decades, that the law is becoming more and more fair with each passing year. And the outcomes are more gender neutral. And there are fathers that seek custody and get custody every single day. And 50-50 custody is a very big trend right now in New York. I happen to be the co-chair of the Women's Bar Association Matrimonial Committee, and they're talking about a presumptive joint custody statute, which is huge. It would mean mothers and fathers from day one in a courtroom would have the same shot at getting 50-50 custody or joint custody. This is huge. And the pandemic really accelerated these trends that were going on already. And when I speak to women clients who always saw themselves as sort of victims and not getting their fair share, even though I'm sure a lot of fathers would disagree, women are now breadwinners. A lot of them are earning more than their spouse. A lot of them are pretty well educated. And we all know that women can be great at multitasking. So a lot of women now, they're the ones paying child support. They're the ones paying spousal support. So the law is fair. And, my biggest job as a family law attorney is to educate my clients, really set their expectations. They need to know how the facts of their situation, every situation is unique, how that is affected by the law. And the law, it provides some predictability. And my job is to keep people out of court if possible. So I want to hear what they have to say. I want to, help them manage their emotions and their expectations, and then try to encourage them to resolve the case without leaving it up to a judge to decide, which is not always the best thing.
You hear people say that a lot in terms of litigation. I think that people going into, especially their first divorce, there's this anticipation that all divorces end up litigated. I think that social media does, plays a part in that, because everyone, I lost my case and the judge didn't believe me, when in reality, most cases are settled, and, people are kind of hyping things up and, and telling,
Yeah, I mean, something like 95% of cases settle before trial.
Yeah.
That's a huge number.
Yeah.
People
one of the
don't
things I wanted to ask you about that is, you mentioned the importance of settling and mediating rather than going the litigation route, where I think a lot of people are anticipating that it's litigation that is probably what's going to end up happening. But why is it so important, and why would that be in your client's best interest to go the mediation route versus the litigation route?
I'm constantly telling my clients advice that's actually against my own financial interests, which is you're going to do better if you don't go to court, if you don't spend the money to fight or file motions, if you really are of a frame of mind which is really forgiving and letting go of the anger you have and trying to make a rational business decision about, is it cost effective to spend $10,000 in legal fees when, it's not worth doing that, or 15 or 20,000 in legal fees.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's worth the investment to do that. Sometimes it's necessary, but oftentimes it isn't. And it really is hard for people to accept, because in American culture, we do have this sort of narrative that divorce is a fight, and you see celebrity divorces, and you hear about your friend's divorce. And there's this visceral desire to really punish your spouse with the most high-powered shark lawyer, which I've been called a shark before, and then other people think I'm too nice. I mean, I've been called everything in the book, actually, Matthew. So these labels don't mean much to me, but people are attracted to this idea that divorce is a battle that they have to win, and it's part of American culture.
It sounds like because a lot of people want to punish their soon-to-be ex rather than actually trying to find and work out something in the middle. Yeah. But it sounds like it probably works out better for them long term. Because when people forget that you're still, even though you're going through a divorce, you may not see that person every day, but you still have to deal with them on a regular basis.
Yeah. I mean, the desire to punish, it's very much there. A lot of divorces start out because of infidelity or financial secrets, and it can really trigger a very intense rage, a feeling of betrayal that really lasts for a long time, feelings of loss and sadness. And some people are not as resilient as others, and they stay in those negative, sad feelings for a very long time, and it's hard for them to recover. And that plays into their legal strategy. It plays into what they ask their lawyers to do. And there are other people that are much more resilient and really ready to let go, forgive, reach an agreement, and move on. And because we now have a no-fault divorce statute, which has been in place for 10 years or more, divorce is less stigmatized. And so people are, sort of shaking off those negative allegations and acknowledging maybe they had a role to play in the end of their marriage, right? You have to have a little bit of insight into your own mistakes and humanity. And joint custody is helping too. Believe it or not, a lot of moms really like joint custody. They like having a few days away from their children to kind of recharge and focus on their careers or their personal life, and then still have a great co-parent. And this is a sort of a new phenomenon, this idea that parents, most of them are both working, that they're going to raise children together without this negative association from the breakup. And you do see it in the celebrity world too. So it's always good to see that. Celebrities that manage to work out their differences privately and to co-parent, which is really what judges want to see, and which is probably in the best interest of children in most cases. I'm not going to say every case. There are some cases where that is just not the right outcome.
I kind of want to talk about a little bit about the differences between those two cases. I'm really glad that you're in New York, because you'll know what I'm talking about when I say this. I know this isn't true of every state. But one of the things that I talked a lot about on this show is that both parents have rights. And people forget that sometimes, that even though you may be the mother, even though you may have been the primary caregiver or whatever the case is, both parents still have equal rights in the eyes of the court and in the eyes of the judge. And people forget, like, people kind of get attached to children, or, I mean, obviously we're going to be attached to our children, but they get somewhat possessive, thinking and just assuming that everything is just going to go your way. But like you said, a lot of things are starting to go 50-50. And not only are they going 50-50, but we have to remember that the other parent has rights, and the child also has rights. And to take those things away, you're potentially violating the rights of both the parent and the child. And so I kind of wanted to set that up and kind of give people a rundown of that before I ask this next question, because with people who feel that their soon-to-be ex is or has been abusive or could become abusive post-divorce, and they're not there to protect their child, and there is no guarantee that you're going to get full custody of that child, because that other parent still has rights, and they don't have to be the perfect parent. So where would you say that line is drawn, and how would someone know whether or not they really truly have a case they need to have a conversation with their attorney about?
Yeah.
Or that this is something like, you know what, I'm going to have to swallow my pride on this, and we're going to have to work out 50-50 here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a very good question. And a lot of that goes into legal strategy. If people think that their relationship is faltering and that a divorce might happen, it's really a very good idea to have a consultation with an attorney. Most family law attorneys offer a free consultation, as my firm does. It's very important that you understand what your rights are and what your responsibilities are. And everyone needs to understand that we are living in a world where many judges are open to 50-50 custody. The factors that the court consider are the children's ages, their schedule, the parties' work schedules. And in most cases, the judges want to see the children have a full relationship with both parents. And if you're talking about two working parents, and the children are in school, let's say they're school-age children, there's only a certain amount of free time available, and most judges are going to share that. Now, there are going to be some parents, mostly moms, that are quite resistant to 50-50 custody. And there are some women that feel that, it's a little bit of a stigma not to have primary custody. I think that stigma is falling away. I think now you're going to see more and more joint custody schedules. And so I think you'll hear about it more, and it won't be such a big deal that a mother doesn't have her children most of the time. And I think for fathers, not all of them want 50-50 either. Because again, it's a little bit of a gender role, a societal expectation. Fathers are not expected to really ask for 50-50. Fathers don't usually ask for primary custody at all, unless there's a really good reason. A lot of times it's because of unfitness of the mother. So fathers don't have those same stigmas, those same expectations. People have to realize that, contested litigation, even domestic violence or high conflict divorce disputes, that usually happens in the home before the divorce has even started. Yep. If it's a pattern of conflict, or you have one parent who has sort of checked out and is not really involved in parenting, and then suddenly upon the divorce wants to be very involved. The best parents, that children deserve are involved from the beginning. They're doing the homework. They're doing the pickup and drop off. They're co-parenting. They're communicating respectfully with their child's other parent. They're financially responsible. I mean, they're doing the right thing. Now, we all know that not all parents reach that standard. And I say that about mothers and fathers.
Right.
I've seen many situations where, everyone in the case, the attorneys, the judges, we're all thinking, thank God we have an amazing father here. The mother is not really doing what she needs to do. And it's always nice to see that you have a very responsible parent. But co-parenting begins at home. It's in every relationship where parties live together or don't live together. And it's really, people need to learn more about it, how to co-parent effectively, respectfully. There's all kinds of apps now that people use. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. Our Family Wizard. Yep. There's another one called Talk Close. Technology can help with communication.
Yeah.
But a lot
we always love our Family Wizard. That's when they're one of our sponsors. So
yeah, it's very widely.
I recommend, but as much as we recommend it, they're a sponsor of ours. We do recommend, if because it's not the go-to app in every single state,
right?
So whatever they recommend in your state, make sure you that. Make sure.
Yeah, there's something available in most states, but anything that aids communication, a lot of it comes down to communication, respectful communication.
And I tell people, make sure you have that. Even if you don't use one of the apps, make sure you outline what communication looks like in your decree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. Listen, there are parents that never get divorced, have what you would call a great relationship, and still the communication is not the best, and the parenting, it's a standard we all strive for. You have to constantly try to do better at it, and hopefully by the time your children are teenagers, you have figured it out, because teenagers will really, really test your parenting skills.
Yeah,
you want to be communicating well as parents by that stage. Otherwise, your teenager will really rule the house and run right over both of you.
Yeah.
So parenting, it's sort of like this is the way God intended it. When children are younger, they're a little bit less challenging. They're a little bit more innocent, a little bit more obedient. And hopefully parents are building up their skills and building up that trust between themselves so that by the time they really need help, and for some kids, it's as young as 11 or 12, that they start to become a little bit disrespectful, or they grow up a little too fast, or, social media or their phones or whatever is going on with their friends. You want to have that co-parenting communication pretty strong by that point, if you can, because you're going to need it.
There's no guarantee that they're going to continue to do the 50-50 and like it to a point where they just, as they get older, just say, what? Sick of it, I'm going to stay at this parent's house. And
correct.
Sometimes people do that, and they're so fixated on their ex and the conflict that they have with their ex that they don't even realize that they've been losing the relationship with the child for, consistently over years. And it wasn't the other parent who convinced them to stay there. It was the fact that you lost your relationship with them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't, they're so fixated on the conflict that they don't really see that.
100%. The children will notice. They notice which parent puts down the other parent. They notice which parent is not there, is not checking in with them. The children can tell. They understand which parent is really doing the heavy lifting. And yes, it's very true. By the time children are preteens, their preference, where they want to live, is going to shake things up. If they're not happy with 50-50, or they're not happy with one of their parents, it's not going to be hard to get a modification, because most judges want children that are in junior high or middle school and high school to be happy and to get their way and to have the schedule that they feel comfortable with. So this is important that people understand. Children do have rights. And by the time they're 11 or 12, those rights are going to really have a lot of weight in court.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, something that we're both very passionate about, is mental health when it comes to divorce cases. Of course, we're going to have to touch on narcissism because that's the hot buzzword, and we'll talk about when it's diagnosed versus undiagnosed. But there's also a lot of other mental health diagnoses that people have to deal with, and people might start to discover when they are going through a case, bipolar, substance use, those sorts of things. Let's start out when it's undiagnosed and someone kind of feels like there's an issue there, and they don't have a psychological eval. Maybe they have their significant other, former significant other is military, and they're seeing some PTSD symptoms, but the person won't go to therapy. They won't go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And how do you present that appropriately to a lawyer or to the judge? Especially, if you want to, you can separate that out a little bit, because I think that talking about narcissism is very different from talking about some of the other mental health aspects because of the buzzword and because of the stigma on that these days as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I've studied personality disorders. Like I said, they're a very big part of why divorces happen and why relationships fail. So narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder, or people that have narcissistic tendencies, really you're talking about someone who is critical and maybe sometimes aggressive and sometimes controlling, and a little bit of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, can be very concerned with their image outside the home, but inside the home is very domineering and controlling. And it is correlated with domestic violence. There can be financial control, there can be verbal abuse, there can be physical abuse. And none of that is okay. And so if you're encountering, a lot of times narcissistic people are also very successful. There are people, a lot of CEOs and heads of companies and celebrities and politicians have narcissistic tendencies. It doesn't necessarily mean your relationship is going to be abusive or fail. It just means that there are certain personality characteristics, and it's the kind of thing where if you read up about it, you'll check off the boxes and you'll realize that the person you're with has narcissistic tendencies, or that maybe you yourself do. It's just something to keep in mind. It doesn't necessarily mean it's harmful or abusive. When it gets to an extreme level, it absolutely can be. A lot of times people come to me, men and women, and they will tell me that they feel victimized. And they are victims of a narcissistic relationship that they have put up with for years. And they're somewhat broken by it. And they doubt their own reality. And if you are in a situation like that, you're dealing with someone who has any type of abusive personality, whether it's narcissism, OCD, someone who's highly anxious, someone who's controlling, someone who rages and screams. You need to speak to a therapist. You need someone else to validate what you're going through and try to give you coping mechanisms. Because if your goal is to stay in the relationship, there can be coping mechanisms. You can maybe request marriage counseling. Counseling can be effective in some cases. If it crosses the line and where you really are being harmed by it, and I'm talking about domestic violence, then that's never okay. You cannot stay in a relationship where you're being harmed, because not only are you being harmed, but under New York law, any children in the household, even if they don't witness the abuse, they're also being harmed. And it's actually a factor in custody. So you need to start to create what's called an exit strategy. You need to document the abuse, speak to a therapist, maybe have your children see a therapist, start talking to attorneys. There are many, many, many very good victim services agencies that will give you therapy for free. One of them near where I am is the Safe Center. There are other ones, Sanctuary for Families, and other very good ones in New York City. There are victim services agencies. So the number one thing is to get help. Get help. Sometimes it takes multiple attempts to leave a bad relationship. You might need to get an order of protection. You need to get counseling. You need to get some advice. So start there. When we're talking about more significant psychiatric diagnoses, I'm talking about bipolar disorder or maybe alcoholism, substance abuse. There's a lot of that out there. Schizophrenia or, severe anxiety and depression, which also can have very controlling and, explosive rage because it's from that need to control.
A lot of people don't know about this, and with men in particular, depression looks very different in men. And they may not present as like down and sad. They might present as angry and irritated and very explosive, like what you're just describing.
Yeah.
And that can actually look for people who don't know what to looking for. That can look like narcissism for a lot of people as well.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of overlap between a lot of these things. Yeah. Irritable behavior is definitely a red flag, and you want to speak to someone about other symptoms. Bipolar disorder is really a mood disorder. So you'll have periods of very low mood and then periods of what's called manic behavior. It's a very big trigger for divorce. Your partner is not sleeping. They're spending uncontrollably. They might be drinking. They might be cheating on you. They're sort of in a frenzy of activity, and maybe they're undiagnosed. And sometimes it's a misdiagnosis. So bipolar disorder and some of the more serious substance abuse disorders, they're a very big trigger for divorce. Yeah. And I've met many wonderful men and women that really file for divorce just in an effort to get their spouse into treatment. It's sort of like their red line. I'm going to divorce you unless you go for treatment. And then, because I really do believe that some marriages can be saved, and I'm all about helping people reconcile and become healthier if that's what's good for them and their marriage. A lot of times a 30-day inpatient or getting a diagnosis, or they have now SoberLink or other things they can do to monitor substances or substance abuse, it can help save a family, save a relationship. And maybe that's what needs to be done, So you can use divorce, a family law attorney, strategically to give a very strong ultimatum to a partner who is in denial and refusing to get help. And these are not problems that you can really handle without help. The average layperson is not going to be equipped to deal with a spouse with these types of issues. You have to get help. You have to get help yourself, and then you'll be in a position to help your partner. And also stay out of danger. So you might have to call the police. You might have to get an order of protection. Sometimes these behaviors become so extreme that they actually could be harmful. So
people who have followed me for a while know that I used to be a substance use therapist, and I agree. There was times where people would come in for their substance use, and then we eventually started working on their relationship. And a lot of times, it's kind of like a domino effect. If you're not drinking and if you're in better moods and you start taking care of your mental health, then all of a sudden you start noticing that your relationships and people and things around you start to get better as well. Jackie, you are a wealth of knowledge. You are absolutely brilliant. And we thank you so much for your experience.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to kick it over to you. Tell people where they can find you at if people want to work with you, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to support you in any way. Where can they find you and learn a little bit more about you and your firm?
Matthew, this conversation went so fast. I could talk to you for longer, and I hope you'll.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do it again. Sure.
My pleasure. So my name is Jackie Harounian. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jacqueline Harounian. I engage a lot. I post a lot of blogs on LinkedIn, especially about psychology and different issues regarding family law. I'm on Instagram. It's Wisselman Harounian Family Law, which is where Matthew found me. Thank you very much, Matthew.
You're welcome.
You can also contact me by email. It's info@lawjaw.com, LAWJAW.com. And if you email me and you want a free consultation, I will definitely do what I can to help you or connect you with resources to help you.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can go down into the description. All of her information will be there. Also, if you are listening on a podcast, if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple, you can go down to the comment section and let us know something, a takeaway that you may have learned from today that maybe you didn't know before. Also, all of her information will be in the show notes if you would like to connect with her. And be sure to go over to her social media page, learn a little bit about her, especially if you are someone you know might be interested in a family law attorney in New York. And or even if you just kind of are curious and you kind of want to learn what she's about and some things that she posts about, some things that you want to learn more about. Something I learned about was relocation. So a lot of you people who might struggle with relocation or you're considering it, that might be something you can learn from her as well. Jackie, we're definitely going to have to do this again. You're right. It did go by way too quick, but I had a feeling that this was going to be a great connection. So we'll have to do it again.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you, everyone.